Alright, welcome back to Game 10 of Lucid's 2022 tournament, where we are playing Phlegra. It is turn 30. I think it's going to be a relatively quiet one for us. Let's see. Finish Research and Alteration 6 is for our Battle Fortune. It's a dire portent. This is not good news. Okay, so Utgard put up Mother Oak. Yeah, I think this is a fairly standard play for them. I don't know how well Utgard can take advantage of nature gems, but having used like some nations that have like the Seath magic, the kind of pathing that they have, definitely those nations hungered for nature gems. So this is probably a good move from them. And regardless, I mean, any nation can use nature gems. We miss with a site search. That's on the Throne Province, so a little sad. Here we are clearing out those spies. Yeah, misfortune situation. Not really strictly necessary, I would say, with late age Phlegra. There's a lot I would change about this build. Not that I don't know if I'll ever play late age Phlegra again. They weren't exactly on my short list. Legions of Steel, yeah, I don't think that's really necessary. We just didn't have anybody else to command this squad, so we might as well do something useful. Yeah, it works out. Should have no losses there. Yeah, against a few light infantry. And then this is Ulm jumping on top of, I'm guessing, Kalem's last fort here, and Kalem chose to march out, so there isn't really anything here, and I don't think there's anything really inside. In fact, Kalem may have gone AI. And then we get attacked by Utgard in a couple of places. We left some patrollers in place, in this location, and we didn't do a province defense dump, but we added some PD, definitely. Yeah, so there's a little bit of swarm casting. Some danger there, definitely, but our guys were on hold and attack. That's really one of the greatest dangers of Swarm is, your commander getting sniped. So the mage is set to retreat, so she probably survives, although, there is always risk there. They're not guaranteed to retreat successfully, and we're able to rout those crossbowmen, so yeah, like, now that we know that, Utgard is going to be trying these super low commitment raids, we should be able to turn them around relatively quickly, though I do think this player is good enough that, they'll switch it up, right? They're not just going to keep sending low commitment raids. All right, forgot to mention this last turn. We're sending our Pretender in against one of Utgard's province defense dumps. It's kind of important, but there's a lot going on right now for me personally. So anyway, this is the kit. It's been altered, upgraded, side graded. So this is more for chaff clearing. The Vine Shield is going to help us a lot. Cold Brand is going to be nice, Frost Brand. We've got the Mistletoe Garland. She can only wear crowns, so this would not be my first choice for headgear if we could wear anything, but this does provide us some poison resistance and, more importantly, luck, so it's going to make it less likely that she's actually killed. Probably the thing to cut for this would be the Burning Pearl, like right with the Frost Brand. It's not, you don't need that because it's just an area of effect, so she doesn't actually have to connect to deal damage, and then she has her petrification anyway, so this was just for the repelling, and it was kind of left over, and I don't know, I didn't really have anything else useful to put in there. Probably like some fatigue reduction, anything that gives reinvigoration would be nice. And we're up against a bunch of barbarians, right? This is a dangerous thing to be slamming really any kind of super combatant into, but barbarians have really low magic resistance, or maybe just standard magic resistance, which is pretty low. So Vine Shield works against them pretty well, though there is some danger that the Vine Shield gets broken because the barbarians do hit pretty hard. So, there's definitely danger here, but we have enough research. I'm pretty confident. We've got the fear, we've got the petrification. We'll be killing them with the the Frost Brand as well. Yeah, you can see they get absolutely slammed by the petrification and entangled, right? And the javelins I was actually a little more worried about. She was originally set to attack rear, and then I was like, well, maybe closest would be better so that the javelins are at longer range. And I was hoping the javelins were going to kill more barbarians, which they do tend to do. When you get set to stone, that does increase your protection, so you're less likely to be killed. Same thing with these other human troops, like all the same stuff applies to them, so yeah, there's not a whole lot of danger here. Other than the fact there is some danger that like Utgard could choose to drop their monolith on top of our Pretender, and I do not think she would do great against the monolith. Like, the monolith would probably kill her. That would strand the monolith, so we'll probably actually move our army to the north, in the wasteland to our north, with an eye to attacking the monolith if it does get dropped on our Pretender. Because Utgard would have to build a lab there, right, before they could get the monolith out. Although, yeah, I think they could still get it out, right? Because they could build the lab, and then they could cast the same turn that we're moving in, and so I would have had to move out last turn. So maybe should have waited one turn. Didn't really calculate out the exact turn order there. So we'll see. We might get a monolith dropped on our Pretender, but we don't... I mean, don't get me wrong, our Pretender is very useful. Losing our Pretender would suck. We also don't really have a lot in the way of priests, so like bringing her back would be a bit of a bother. We don't really rely on our Bless at all, so for the rest of our armies and troops and plans, it doesn't matter at all. It's just that we don't have our Pretender to utilize to help assist things. So that does work out for us, and that's a lot of gold to be losing, and this will hopefully dissuade Utgard from making these kind of province defense dumps, or if they do keep making them, then we can just keep using our Gorgon to clear them for free, assuming that she's still in the land of the living. But we'll get her back eventually, even if a monolith does drop on her and kill her. Probably I need to change her script this turn. I don't know what we would be casting to better deal with a monolith. This we're probably going to lose. Although, yeah, one mage is hanging out. Or no, she's going to retreat as well. I think these bugs are magic beings. Yeah, so one leader does have to hang out. Otherwise, I think the bugs just die. But there's a pretty good chance... Well, we got lucky, right? Because, again, the commander could get sniped. Swarm rating is a bit hit and miss. Although this is 2 casts. Yeah, 2 casts against 6 PD does tend to work out. I'm not actually sure where this is, because I thought we'd upped the province defense in a location, that any location they could hit. So this rate does work out. And of course, this is another use of nature gems, right? So the fact that they have Mother Oak makes this, significantly cheaper for Utgard to be doing. But this is also not going to be, particularly difficult for us to stop. We'll just have to increase our province defense levels on the border. And then we do catch a battle between Vedheim and Micklin. This is a pretty serious force from Vedheim. Fairly high commitment. Mages, Sacreds. I think we've seen this one before. This is the one that we're kind of trailing. And it's just up against a little bit of province defense. So things look like they're going decently well for Vedheim here against Micklin. And perhaps their confidence was not misplaced. And then I think this is just a ping. Yeah, this is our ping. So yeah, just one PD here. Now, of course, they could, Utgard could change this, right? There still could be a dump, but they're not going super heavy in province defense everywhere. So that is interesting information. We'll see if our commander survives the retreat. They do, so that's nice. I think it's like 75% chance for most units, so usually they survive the retreat, but not always. Right, there's a fertility cult, so, we lose some dominion here. I think this is the province with some more foreign mages that we might be interested in fortifying, so, eventually we'll probably just throw up a temple here and then hopefully, preach this away, but we'll see. It might get out of hand before we get to it. And then there's some barbarians, fantastic. So probably need to increase the province defense here or move somebody in to intercept this situation. And we find 1 nature gem. That's definitely some misfortune at play. Some patrollers. We are trying to patrol down some of the unrest in a few of our provinces has really gotten out of control. Not out of patrol. We're going to patrol down the stuff that's gotten out of control. And so this will hopefully help our income situation. And then, yeah, I forgot we have a promotion mechanic. I think our guys promote into the Iron Guard, which I'm still not totally sold on, but we'll probably recruit them at some point, just to check them out. Though I have a suspicion that they're better off in the early game since they have that lower than normal magic resistance. And I'll catch you guys after the cut. All right, this is the situation and what we're doing about it. We are moving out with both of our forces. Probably we will also be mono-dropped. We got some warning from Atlantis that I guess Utgard in the general chat is boasting about how they're going to, destroy some threat or something. And Atlantis felt that, my Gorgon was a pretty obvious target. And we've already talked about how, there's a good chance that's going to be happening, so I am expecting that next turn. We have more or less the same script, but we're putting an attack in there, so I'm hoping she's going to fly to the monolith, and then we have her set to advance and cast spells. We actually do have Shatter researched, which is pretty good against inanimates. So it's not impossible that we come away with it, but it's pretty unlikely since, Utgard's going to be able to set up their script. Can't really gear a monolith. It only has, 1 gear slot, but I mean, that 1 gear slot will at least be relevant for killing our Gorgon versus, our kit is relevant for clearing chaff, which a monolith definitely is not. So we probably will lose the Pretender in all likelihood. If we do not, she will join this battle down here. We really do need to read this province. Would like to put a fort here. Would like to put a fort everywhere, I guess, because we also want a fort down here. We're probably overbuilt in forts now, I feel like. I don't know. I'm back and forth. Actually, looking at the mages, I guess let's talk about the armies a little bit, because Phlegra's mages, I mean, I've talked some about how I'm not thrilled about them, but really not thrilled with them at all. I guess we're really going to have to rely on these tyrants coming out. So this is the force in the north, which is a little weaker because, got slapped earlier. And it's roughly the same plan, just less troops, more mages. So we're going to have swarms, and we actually have the swarms happening kind of like behind our crossbowmen. So we have the crossbowmen set up in skirmish formations. So hopefully the bugs will kind of move through the crossbowmen and get mixed up with them. And then hopefully, let's see, we have a couple battle fortunes coming out, and we're not going to get full coverage with just 2 casts of that. But we don't have a ton of astral magic, right? So this is going to be somewhat difficult for us to do. And we want to include, a lot of incinerates, and we don't actually have all that many incinerates, and then we're going to burn out these communion slaves, definitely. And there's a fairly good chance that this happens, even if it's just a province defense dump. We'll see, right? Ugar's been kind of going back and forth, but I feel like we have to commit a decent amount, right? Because there are some Gam herdings here. They're Garm herdings. I think I'm going back and forth on that. I'll try to correct that. So Garms, not Gams. So anyway, there's some Garms here, so we need to commit because, they could come out to play. And I don't know if that's going to be enough incinerate, but we can't really bring more to bear than what we have. We'll see. These guys should be able to push out, quite a few incinerates because they're decently high-level firecasters. We'll be able to put Phoenix Pyre on them, and then they'll also get a boost from the communion slaves. Could have brought out one more communion slave, which would have given the communion some more legs. Could have brought out more mages. Possibly should have brought out more mages. Definitely the original plan was to bring everyone out, but I mean, if we brought out all these oppressors, basically we're too oppressor heavy here. I think now I'm thinking that a decent ratio might be, it's you have to recruit 2 shackled mages before you recruit an oppressor, right? You have to have a 2-1 ratio at least, because a battle of any length is the oppressor is going to burn out those shackled mages. We're cobbling together brutal communions. So I've been kind of focused more on oppressors, understanding that we definitely do need shackled mages. We have shackled mages, but we don't have the right ratio. You really do need more shackled mages than oppressors, which is brutal because the shackled mages are awful, just truly awful. From a research standpoint, I guess they're okay. I mean, they are inept researchers, but I mean, they are really, really cheap, right? So, especially with our magic scales, which we have here, we're actually getting pretty good research value out of these guys. So, that's cool. And, I have worked a decent amount with communions, but never with a Phlegran communion. I'd looked at them before, and of course, the first thing I saw is oh, cool, they auto communion, right at the start. So that means that you get turn 1 communions, right? Communions that can actually do useful things on the first turn of combat, which is really important. So it seemed this is that's pretty cool. That's an upgrade. It is not a strict upgrade though, not at all, because you can't use these guys in any other way, right? They just immediately go in as a communion slave. So whereas normally somewhere we have a shackled mage, I'm sure, who's water 1, right? We actually do have Frozen Heart researched. Not that Frozen Heart would be particularly useful in this case with their built-in frost resistance and facing undead, but just as an example, sometimes you might want to use these mages to cast other things. You just can't do that, right? You have to bring the communion. They have to be a part of the communion. So they're completely useless unless they have a master in place. And then the problem with these guys is they're also pretty useless unless they're part of a communion, right? They're just 1-1-1 splits. But then because the communions are awful, you're going to generally be burning out your communion every single time. So you have mages that are completely useless without a communion, and then you have mages that are mostly useless without a communion, and then your communions implode basically every battle. Now, I mean, again, this is somewhat theory crafting, right? We haven't actually fought that many battles as Phlegra, but, as like I'm starting to put together the armies and think about the situation, these are kind of the thoughts that I'm having. So yeah, kind of sad about our mage situation. Like, we really should get a fort up here. Although, again, like I said, we're kind of overbuilt in terms of forts. Because, I was thinking, it's like, okay, well, our troops aren't great, but like at least we have these communions that are pretty cheap. And they are cheap, right? That is at least one good thing, is that like none of these mages cost that much. Like particularly the shackled mages, pretty cheap. Not quite as cheap as augurs, who get more paths, but what are you gonna do? Still, 70 gold mage is pretty cheap, and then our actual main battle mage at 115, like that's also on the cheap side, absolutely. So in that sense, it's like, yeah, you want a lot of infrastructure so you can build a lot of mages, and if you're gonna use the Phlegran mage core, I do think it's true. I just think that it's going to be a little challenging to like use this mage core effectively, especially over like a long-term campaign. So anyway, that's kind of why like we didn't bring these other mages, because just like the communion's going to burn out really quickly, even if we bring this third communion slave. And I think the plan is we're hopefully going to finish, not quite. We're probably going to have to produce a couple shackled mages here, or maybe move them forward. That's the other thing that's just rough. Like, everybody's old, and so they tend to stack up afflictions really quickly on the oppressor side. And then, the shackled mages, because they don't treat them great, they just tend to come with afflictions anyway. So, like, I swear, like half these guys have like a limp or are crippled, and so just nobody moves very fast as far as our mages are concerned. But anyway, we're gonna have to bring up more mages to this fort, definitely. But the idea is like, well, if we bring forward these oppressors, yeah, they'll be useful here, but like if we don't fight, if it's just a province defense dump, like they're just going to ensure that we burn out the communion, and then they're not going to be useful in the subsequent battle because we won't have enough communion slaves to boost them. So we could have given them fire gems, like that probably would have been the play. Like now that I'm talking through this, we could have given our oppressors a fire gem apiece, and that could have gotten them up so they could cast Phoenix Pyre. Yeah, actually, but even then they're just Fire 2. Incinerate is Fire 3, so that means every single Incinerate cast is going to require a gem. We'd have to give these guys like 5 gems apiece, which we could do. We have the fire gems, and like I don't know what else we're going to spend them on just yet, but that's just a really expensive way to operate. That's kind of, in theory, one of the advantages of using Incinerate versus fire elementals. I mean, obviously fire elementals, kind of get slammed because of the magic weapons, so that's a problem as well, but also it's really expensive to rely, completely on elementals. So in theory, Incinerate, it's not such an expensive option, but if your mages are awful, then everything is an expensive option. So anyway, we should at least be able to beat the province defense dump. If Utgard brings out their Garms, then, we'll see. Right? Garms plus a province defense dump, like we may lose this. We may end up losing this fortification, though they don't have a ton in. Even if we lose this fortification, like obviously that's bad, right? But it would give Atlantis time to recover, and that's kind of the other option. Again, like reviewing this situation, I do think that there's a strong argument to be made to just bury the hatchet with Utgard and try to focus on Atlantis. But it again bumps into the issue of, well, we know that like Utgard is interested in, I'm sure everybody is somewhat interested. It's like, okay, Atlantis is weak right now, like let's attack them, and that's definitely how Utgard plays the player. That's how it seems, and especially considering that Atlantis has attacked them already, like sure, why wouldn't they prosecute that war? We have a non-aggression pact with Atlantis, so we're gonna have to wait 3 turns before we do anything. 3 turns is a long time, especially since we're probably the one that's fighting Utgard the most right now. Not really sure about Vedheim. I know they've been fighting at least a little bit, but obviously Vedheim is somewhat focused on Mictlan. So if we take pressure off Utgard, they get 3 turns, to just push as hard as they can on Atlantis, and like how much does that really leave for us? And then once that war finishes, like where's Utgard gonna be? Are they gonna be like, yeah, Phlegra, our good friend? Or are they gonna be like, okay, now that we've finished Atlantis, time to move on to Phlegra? And then we're in the same situation, but we're down an ally, and Utgard has a lot more territory. So, 10 turns ago, right, maybe Atlantis was the right choice. But in terms of like switching gears now, it's still debatable. I don't think that this war has not been going well for us, and probably will continue to not go great for us. We'll see once the tyrants come out, right? I mean, that's kind of, that's our thing. We got the tyrants, so hopefully they're going to show up. Well, they could have shown up this turn, actually, so we're a little bit behind, in theory. If I recall, I think it's a 25% chance that they show up this turn, and then it's 1% increasing every turn after. So next turn, there'll be a 26% chance that the event happens, then 27, 28. So like it's pretty likely that it's going to happen within the next 5 turns, but not guaranteed. So, you know, we could be rolling around with this kind of gimped nation for some time. We do at least have access like to some independent mages. Like the throne mages, I think, are going to help a lot in the long term. But, you know, with the slow to recruit aspect, we're just never going to have that many of them. So anyway, so that's a lot of thoughts on our armies. In the south, the situation's a bit better, both because our army is a little bit better. Like, yeah, this army is scripted basically to not burn out the communion, because I feel that like we're going to just be bringing enough troops that we can deal with a province defense dump. Like, I'm not too worried about it. We don't actually really need the mage support, and there isn't anything here, I think, I could be wrong in terms of the movement, but like we don't really see anything that could reach this province that's going to be dangerous, right? Even if they reinforce with a javelinist and 20 crossbowmen and swarm, I think we have way too many troops. So even if they do province defense dump, they haven't yet, but they could. I think we beat that without using our mage core. And if we use our mage core, we burn out all our communion slaves, right? So we're bringing the mages, but they're going to do nothing for this first battle, which is always dangerous and risky. And we are bringing a bunch of gems. This also will hopefully, right, like Ukar won't really know what's going on because, like, okay, there's no gems on these mages. So, you know, even if they just leave 1 PD, I mean, even if they leave a lot of PD, they won't get to see our script. Now, that said, they're going to get to see our script up here, right? And so, yeah, I mean, that's it. So we're not really hiding all that much, but the main thing is that we're not going to burn out the communion because there's a decent chance that they will be able to, like, you know, move units up from the capital or from somewhere, you know, this turn, and then reinforce this fort by the time we actually jump on top of it. So that's the battle that we need to save our communion slaves for, and we need to adjust our recruitment. Let's see, yeah, shackled mage, right? Like, and then shackled mage. So we need a lot more shackled mages. Like I said, we're too oppressor heavy right now, and then like probably everywhere. I know I said we weren't going to recruit that many of these witches, but like honestly, at this point, like, I mean, the witches aren't amazing mages either, but like swarm is probably one of the more powerful spells we can cast right now, and we actually have a decent nature income. So yeah, we're going to keep producing the witches. It's also nice because they're sacred, so they're larger, so they're actually pretty fast moving around. Map move 18, which is nice. And then of course continuing with the throne mage production, but like, man, it's going to be slow going. So, and then we are recruiting troops, so also kind of like slow going. You know, crossbowmen and mouflon is pretty much where we're at. I have played around with the idea, like, maybe we try some Iron Guard, you know, like, I don't know, we'll see. I would like to at least try them just to, you know, kind of exercise all the parts of the nation. We are doing some forging this turn somewhere. Let's see, yeah, forging and ring of regeneration. We're definitely going to want those for our tyrants. And then somewhere, hopefully, we're forging, yeah, some midget mashers and a few other pieces of gear. So we're forging some gear in anticipation of that first tyrant coming out, and we'll talk more once the tyrant's actually out. And the midget mashers, one of them is for Vedheim, and then we're going to forge one for ourselves. Vedheim is, very big on the idea of using midget mashers on the Garms, and like we do have size 5 commanders, right? So these fellows, even before we get the oppressors, or no, sorry, not the oppressors, our tyrants coming out. The tyrants are size 6, and the midget masher deals 2 times damage. It's a 2-handed weapon, but it gets a bonus, so you deal 2 times damage to anything that's smaller than you. Garms are size 4. So like, yeah, like it, I don't know, you know, it's, I have had trouble having army thugs, you know, really like make an impact. And like, these guys are not the best fighters. At least Garms, because they're berserkers, right, and defense, it's not really their focus. So like, we could actually probably connect with these guys. And you know, they are decent mages. You know, you can cast like Flying Shield and Temper Flesh and Iron Skin. But you know, it's like in a lot of ways like taking a bigger giant and sending them against other really scary giants. I don't know. You know, I'd already gone down the route of like, well, let's try this incinerate situation, but like now that the now that the mage core, I'm really like thinking it through and trying to put it in action, and it's like, there could be some problems here. We may switch more into more of these Cyclops Smiths, like at least until the Tyrants come out. Like Vedheim may be onto something here. So I've been somewhat resistant to going down this route, also because the Midget Mashers use Earth Gems, which we don't have a lot of, and I was really hoping to dump those into our summons later. So it's like, if we could find another solution, that would be great. But if things really turn against us, we'll probably dump a good amount of Earth Gems into Midget Mashers, give it a shot, at least get all of our Cyclopses geared up and see how that goes. So yeah, I think that more or less covers it. Let's see, research, hasn't really changed, right? We're going for construction right now because we're expecting the Tyrants to come online. I don't really actually have anything specific at Construction 6 that I want for them. This is just more like, I just want to have all the construction options available to them. Also, of course, the lanterns, right? We get the research lanterns at level 6, and we're a Fire Nation. We have a lot of fire gems. The earlier you get those lanterns online, the better they are. So we're not like rushing the lanterns or anything, but that's sort of the argument for going Construction 6 before Enchantment 6, because Enchantment 6 is going to be pretty big, assuming we have any Earth Gems left, which we'll see about that. And then the Evocation Research, we'll see. That's definitely like a maybe. So yeah, I think that more or less covers turn 30.